Hello everybody, this is Nick Dutch back on the camera again one more time. Amen. I really don't know why I did that. Anyway, some of you people out there know that I've done something which I never thought I would do, namely I started living a Christian lifestyle, which is obviously a little weird. So what I thought is, I'm going to come across people who I disagree with strongly, and there's going to be people out there who I'm going to disagree with strongly, and they're going to approach me and all the rest of it. So I'm going to try and work out what they're thinking, alright? Because I don't think like a lot of other Christians out there. I just don't do that, okay? I'm only doing this basically to keep myself sane, balanced, it's spiritual, it's all the rest of it. So what I thought I'd do is start having a look into Christian apologetics. Oh, big scary subject. And let's go through a few of the ones I've got here. I've got, I think it's a WAP page called WAPpedia. And this section deals with like the history of apologetics and what the word apologetics means. It comes from a word which means in defense of, but the word in English of course means to ask for forgiveness for, but essentially it's not about that, it's about defending. So a Christian apologist is someone who's defending Christianity or Christian theology or something, stuff like that. Okay, some of the categories of apologetic arguments are here in front of me. The cosmological argument argues that the existence of the universe demonstrates that God exists. No, it doesn't. The existence of the universe demonstrates that the universe exists, okay? Various primary arguments from cosmology and the nature of causation are often offered to support the cosmological arguments. Yeah, but on the other hand, the only thing that the cosmological argument can possibly prove is that the cosmos exists. That's it, full stop, finito. Okay, the universe is here, fine, the universe exists. There's no real direct causality. However, one could say that if you're in a meditative state of mind, and what you actually do is you think about the idea that the universe is created by a creator, it could, bam, blow your mind wide open. It's a very mind-expanding idea, especially if you take into account the vastness of the universe, and you really start, reaching out with your imagination when you're in a meditative state of mind. Boom, it can be powerful, okay? So that can be a good thing symbolically and hypnotically when you're doing that kind of like weird shit. But on the other hand, is it actually proof positive of the existence of a creator? And if it was proof positive of the existence of a creator, where on earth would the faith be? The fact of the matter is there would be no faith. So essentially it doesn't prove it and actually acts against the faith-based position. So essentially it's wrong. Next one I've got in front of me. Teleological argument, the argument from design. Oh, we're all familiar with that, Charlie, aren't we? Argues that there's a purposeful design to the world around us, and a design which requires a designer. Well, no, some stuff can just happen, okay, full stop, finito. If I take like a really, really massive dump, okay, the bottom line is, were the fingerprints of God actually there sculpting it? Because if there was, I hope he washed his hands, for crying out loud, you know what I mean? Can we say that there's an argument from design? Well, basically, think about how long evolution has taken. Think about how long the universe has been around. We've had like the massive blast or explosion which actually helped to create the solar system. Then of course there's all the the moving from different types of climatic conditions, including snowball Earth, to all the rest of that. And then of course there's a moment when abiogenesis occurred. Then there's a various different species which actually started to develop, and hey presto, humans suddenly came along. Then humans changed their diets and started to move on to cook food so the gut could shrink, the brain could grow, so we started becoming intelligent. And this is all basically out of a series of complex things happening over millennia and millennia and millennia and millennia and millennia. So essentially, can a teleological argument actually basically work there? Well, basically no, it's just that stuff actually happens. It's just stuff happens. There could be a design there, there might not be a design there. The bottom line is, no one can actually say. But on the other hand, it's another one of those mind-blowing ideas, which if you're in a meditative, like prayerful, like basically, a messed up state of religious reverie, it's another thing that can blow your mind wide open and assist you to develop a religious experience. But again, it's also acting against faith. Why is it acting against faith? Because it's trying to prove something. And if you prove it, then essentially that's not really a faith position, then is it? No. Dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. The ontological arguments, oh God, argues that the very concept of God demands that there is an actual existent God. Right, well there's a concept of the flying spaghetti monster. Is there an actual flying spaghetti monster? And if so, where is he? Maybe you could invite him around for tea sometime. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Yes. Here's to you, FSM. Essentially, the very concept of God argues that proves that there is a concept of God. And it depends on which God concept you're talking about. I mean, essentially, what God concepts are there? I mean, Christianity is very clever. If you think about it, there's only a few different types of God concept you can have. Alright, you've got a creator concept, you've got a personal deity concept, you've got a universal consciousness type concept, and you've got a multitude of individual deities concept. Now, the creator, the personal deity, and the universal consciousness type thing, alright, that it would actually work as a nice parallel with Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, basically, wouldn't it? So essentially, Jesus Christ, God, and universal energy, consciousness, and good things in people's hearts, that would actually fit into the desires of various individuals. If you think about it, the classical deists, they're actually worshipping, the created deities. They're only revering part of it. Those who believe in spiritual healing energy, for instance, that's probably more like a Holy Spirit interpretation. And those who have a personal deity concept, well, that would be that would follow on with the Jesus Christ type thing. But of course, there's thousands of different types of Christianity in the whole wide world. So essentially, they're all basically acting against each other. Now, is that any different from, let's say, in pagan times? I mean, would there be various different tribes having their own different interpretations as to what the one true God is, and what all the various different mythologies about that would be, and different people would believe in, like Odin, in different ways? Yeah, well, of course they would. So basically, nothing's changed in about 7,000 years, basically, is speaking, because you've got these denominations of Christianity, and all of them there back up their politics, just like in ancient times. The forms of pagan religion would basically be there to back up and to make their tribes stronger in one way or another, because there'll be this belief being thrown in. So does it mean to say that not only did Odin actually exist, but Odin had a split personality in about 50 or 70 different ways? Basically, no, we can't quite say that. But on the other hand, the very concept of concepts show that concepts exist, and concepts can have a power, either over people or with people, or people can actually use them. So it's not actually proof of the existence of God. I mean, this is so convoluted, really, isn't it? I mean, all this stuff is just so convoluted. Anyway, I'll go on. Just bear with me a second. This is quite good fun. I'm enjoying this. Okay. The moral arguments. Argues that if there are any real, objectively valid moral values, then there must have been an absolute form from which they are derived. Well, basically, no, because of course you got the change in species over time, which eventually led to us, and then of course our diet changing, and us shrinking our guts because we're eating cooked food, brains expanding, and all the rest of that. But some of the instincts that we've got are still there to basically hold ourselves, kind of in balance and in check, and make sure that our species carries on doing what our species can carry on doing. So yeah, I mean, the 7 deadly sins, greed. If there was no greed, would you actually eat a meal, for crying out loud? If there was no greed for money, would you actually go out to try and get the money that you needed so you could then afford food? I mean, greed can be good. Alright, but if you have too much of it, you can basically get a bit pathogenic and screwed up. So basically all this stuff about morals is trying to make sure you keep yourself in balance and check, and you actually work in accordance with a society. So essentially, is there a moral lawgiver? Basically, no. There is just nature, there's just instincts, okay? I mean, lust, for example, I love it. Okay, if there wasn't lust, would we ever have children? Would women actually give birth? If men sort of think, no, I'm not going to be lustful, I'm going to be pure. No, of course, we need to have a certain quantity of lust so that we can actually do what we have to do so women can give birth, and thus the species can carry on. It's all about, the species. It's all about nature. But it's a question of getting it in balance so you can have a good, harmonious society. That's essentially what morality is really about, getting it quite right. And of course, it's more complex and convoluted than that, because human life is more complex and convoluted than just the 7 deadly sins thing. So, okay, so let's screw that one for the moment, okay? Because it's not an argument that there has to be a moral lawgiver, but again, it's an interesting idea that you can relate back to if you're in one of these weird trance-like meditative states of mind. Or alternatively, it'll be a good thing to use as a tool of discussion. So as an individual, you can try and get a more nuanced understanding as to what morals mean. So essentially, there's an intellectual change which can happen with the individual if they get involved with further discussion and further debate about various different subjects. They can build up their own personal morality. So there is an intellectual basis for a form of argumentation about morals. But is the moral argument actually worthwhile? Basically, no. Because it doesn't prove God. And what is the point in proving God? Essentially it's a belief position, and it's a useful belief position because humans seem to need it. Okay. Right. The Transcendental argument argues that all our abilities to think and reason require the existence of God. No. A lot of our abilities to think and reason require an education. Right? The abilities that an uneducated person has to think are dramatically different to someone who spent all of their time learning stuff, and also learning how to learn, and also learning how to think, and learning what argumentation is about, and learning what all the logical fallacies are about, and all the rest of that. And that's why logical fallacy videos are out there on YouTube, so people can actually use them to learn more about how to think, because thinking is a skill, and you need to use different styles and types of thinking for different tasks. So the Transcendental argument is again blown out of the water, unless of course God gave us the internet. Which state did he do that on? I don't know. Okay, the presuppositional arguments. Arguments to show basic beliefs of theists and non-theists require God as a necessary precondition. No, because every single person has a different concept of what the word God actually means, because it's a very complex and very nuanced concept. So essentially, that one's thrown out of the water. But if people are going to have an argument about the concept of God, they have to agree as to what the word God actually means, and in great detail, in order for them to, think about, or indeed to be able to discuss what the concept really is. So the presuppositional arguments are also thrown out of the water. We got a few more here. We got Alvin Plantinga argument that belief in God is properly basic. Well, I suppose there is a thing inside human beings to try and regard a thing as being a higher power, whether that is your parents or your employer or whatever, just a thing which is a source of truth, which is something that humans are about. But does that necessarily mean to say that we have to believe in God? No, it's that people believe in higher power concepts. For some people it's their politics, their morality, their family, their friends, the views of their society. It's a different form of higher power concept, but it's not necessarily a belief in God. Alright, so essentially that one is thrown out of the water, okay? Pascal's wager, an argument that given neither theism nor atheism has an evidential advantage, theism is the wiser position. No. Right. Pascal's wager itself has got, lots of problems associated with it. Some people would jump to the conclusion that yes, it would be a wiser position to be a theist, but in what particular case? And I don't think the case of why it is wiser will actually work. It seems like it's a bit of a fear argument. If you don't believe in God, you'll go to hell. Oh yes, you'll go to hell. Well, no, bullshit. I mean, within the New Testament, some of the sayings of Jesus Christ are in fact rather aggressive, which is scary. He comes across as on one side of things talking about peace and love and tolerance and understanding, and on the other side of things there's other bits in which he's saying that only a few will be chosen and all that kind of scary stuff. So what was he trying to do? I mean, the only thing you could think is that he woke up one day with only 3 more years to live and thought, shit, this society is in a terrible state. What are we going to do about it? Hey, we need some more ideas. So then Jesus started coming out with his public ministry type thing, and that's basically where the whole thing actually started. Maybe. Which would actually suggest he was probably quite an aggressive and evangelical type individual, rather than actually necessarily just this Prince of Peace type character. And because of that, maybe there are different forms of Christianity, because different people would revere different aspects of what the whole thing is about, rather than just looking at his more positive arguments and just seeing that is or his positive statements, should we say, and seeing that that's good. No, theism is not the wiser position in accordance with Pascal's wager. Right, that's me looking at current Christian apologetics, or a percentage of them. I'm sure the whole thing is much more complex and nuanced than basically what I have gone into here. But essentially, with these arguments, we can see that there is tons of problems there. Now, relating back to something that I've been into more of, and that is the New Age movement. What are people encouraged to do within the New Age movement when approaching, let's say, Norse mythology? Well, they familiarize themselves with the stories. They build a relationship with the characters, and they then deitize the characters themselves, and don't really care whether they exist or not, because they're often seen as being representatives of something within the mind. it is presupposed by some people who are in the pagan movement that actually being religious in a New Age or pagan kind of way is actually good for you. So why don't we apply the same kind of reasoning or thinking to Christianity? And why don't Christians apply the same kind of reason or thinking to their own faith? And why is it not seen by Christianity as being a form of self-developmental path in which there's certain places you go to at certain times of the week, month or year, certain texts which are reference points and points for discussion, debate and argumentation, and that there is certain transcendental techniques which could possibly affect your mind positively, such as to insert more positive ideas about forgiveness, tolerance, understanding and all the rest of that. And I would say that a possible hypothetical reason for this is because they're so het up with these forms of forms of apologetics, which I've just gone into, which I think is the wrong attitude entirely. Now, if they were to take an attitude of fake it until you make it, if they were to take an attitude of live this style of life, and you will be able to, after a long period of time, be able to chill out a little more, then maybe that would actually work a little better for them, would be a better form of apologetics for Christianity. But if they're not doing it at the moment, then they'll have to make a change somewhere along the line, and it's probably gonna happen. Anyway, that's enough of my ramblings for today. I probably either bored you rigid or given you a heart attack or got your blood pressure up or something along those lines. This is the great and glorious Nick Dutch signing out for now. Speak to you in a while.